Thank you, Heather. So how do we tell the story of what it means to be human? This was the question I had in mind for this morning, long before the news broke yesterday about the most recent killing in Minneapolis. And it's a question that seems more urgent than ever, because in this moment, we are not just fighting for public policy solutions or a better legislative agenda. At the root, we are fighting for control over the narrative of our humanity, who we are, who we have been, and who we want to become. There are competing stories at play. Are we, at our core, competitive or cooperative? Is diversity a threat or a joy? Do we have an obligation to care for our neighbor, or to care only for ourselves and our kin? And just who is our kin, anyway? When we debate about what we see in these brutal recordings of ICE agents in the street, and I want to remind you, you are under no obligation to watch the killing of another human being. You can pass that up. You are not a forensic detective or a judge and jury. You have the option about whether or not you want to allow that into your mind and heart on video. But when we debate about what happened in these videos, we are not even starting from a point of agreed, shared upon reality. We are seeing them through the lens of our basic understanding of what it means to be human. Our perception of what happens in them is shaped by the worldview we bring with us. The violence of the people who work for ICE and the Border Patrol is a manifestation of one of those more violent narratives about humanity. That we are at our core locked in this constant struggle for dominance over other human beings. That it is a dog-eat-dog world, and every scenario has a winner and a loser, and if you are not one, then you are the other. But that's not the only story. There are other stories outside of this violent view of existence. There are alternatives to this zero-sum game of power. So perhaps it's useful this morning to zoom out a little and think about these origin stories we tell ourselves and how they might inform our response to this moment. How do we tell the story of what it means to be human? This question is what was concerning the novelist Ursula LeGuin when she wrote her essay way back in 1986. She was bored with the hero narrative she saw repeated over and over again in novels, the violent and dramatic hunter against the world story. She longed for something different. So she took a look at the stories we tell of the origin of our species and how they have shaped us. Killing a mammoth, well, that's exciting and dramatic and rare compared to the everyday work of harvesting food and raising children and cleaning up the cave. The early artists painted hunters, not the inside of homes. Perhaps she thought because they were inside the home already. Why paint the obvious? Why paint the container? The calm, consistent home life when the world out there, harsh and exciting, as Mary Oliver said, when the world out there was so much more dramatic. As LeGuin says in her essay, it is hard to tell a really gripping tale of how I wrested a wild oat seed from its husk. And then another, and then another, and then another, and then another. As I scratched my gnat bites, and Ool said something funny, and we went to the creek and got a drink and watched the newts for a while, and then I found another patch of oats. The narrative of the heroic hunter grabs our attention precisely because it is not the everyday event, but that rare adrenaline-filled life-or-death victory captured in paint on a cave wall and then picked up in story and song until we think the fight is all there is. We hear that story so often, We can be forgiven if we think that the fight is all there is. This story has dominated the attention of generations of anthropologists and archaeologists that have shaped our modern understanding of our ancient roots. Anthropologists and archaeologists who were, let's be honest, mostly men, who focused on the hard evidence of bones and stones and the stories of hunters painted on walls, perhaps seeing themselves in those narratives, ignoring the daily tasks that we all of every gender undertake, ignoring what they considered the women's work, the children's work, creating a romantic notion that every man can be immortalized in stone if only he kills enough to be remembered. For many of us, the gendered story of men as hunters, as women as gatherers still persists, although more and more evidence points to the fact that to survive, everyone of all genders and all ages had to gather and forage together to learn those cooperative skills. And the vast majority of calories that we consumed came not from the big kill accomplished by the hero, but from the mundane harvest accomplished by the community as a whole. That is how we survived. The protection and survival of our species was not won at the tip of the spear, but gathered around the warm fire and pot of soup. Any lion, after all, can make a kill and leave its teeth mark on the bones. But only humans have learned to weave baskets to carry food and water and the next generation from one home to the next. So LeGuin asks us this question: how does the story change when we stop thinking of violence as the main activity of humanity and instead focus on the carrying, the collecting, the gathering up, rather than the striking down? It's challenging to tell this story because violence is physical, it is durable, it is persistent in the archaeological record. Broken limbs and holes in skulls, abrasions on bone, this is what is left behind to tell the story of our living and dying. But for every body buried with cracked bones, there are thousands buried whole. Tenderness leaves little physical evidence after all. The cool hands placed on a forehead, the tears at a bedside, the songs sung to usher people from this life to whatever comes next, 1,000,000 years after the fact, these cannot be found anywhere as we brush the dirt from a dig site. But they are nonetheless woven into our human history, even if we cannot find them in the mud. The evidence of care is ephemeral. Just like the slings for carrying babies, the sleeping nests, the containers made of grass and bark and hide, the everyday, useful, perishable, relational work of being human. It's not always something we can see after the fact. It is not easy to mount an unrecorded lullaby on a wall and put it in a museum. There is no archaeological evidence of a hug or a handshake. When we reconstruct our past, we are taught to look for the hard truths, the things we can prove incontrovertible in bone and rock and metal and spear. The soft truths pass into time without comment. But does this mean they are any less than true? We are only now beginning to revisit this violent misunderstanding of our earliest ancestors, but it's not just ancient history that needs revisiting. This past summer, I was visiting New York, and we went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And how many of you have wandered through the Hall of Armor in that museum or in some other museum in your lifetime, right? Those halls full of row after row of shining metal and intricate plates to protect our soft human bodies, the swords and the spears and the pikes, all these grand accessories to wars and conquest. But the truth is that in every age, whether Paleolithic or medieval or modern, the everyday objects of our lives far outnumber the weapons. For every suit of armor in a museum, thousands of simple woven shirts and dresses and soft leather shoes were worn by thousands of unarmed people. People who are mending and farming and cooking and cleaning, visiting with the neighbors and haggling at the market. And the clothes wear out, and the bags that hold the oats are thrown away and crumble to dust. But communal care is the heartbeat of our survival. And it, even more so than the violence, is what we pass down from generation to generation. Think of your own life. I'm sure it has not been without harm. But for all the people who have done you harm, how many more are there who simply exist in quiet cooperation alongside you? The bus driver and the mail carrier, the person crossing the street and giving you a nod as you wait patiently at the stop sign. We remember the outliers, the conflicts, but the truth is our days are mostly filled with the simple shared acts of community that leave no trace. And you would not know this from reading our histories, the highlight reels of conquest. You might not know this from walking through a museum with their displays of metal armor and sharpened rock. We have cultivated and curated this very one particular view of our past. A sense that all of human history is about people who conquer and control rather than people who collaborate and cooperate and heal time and time again. Healing is real. Healing can happen, my friends. Collaborative, cooperative, this is what keeps us surviving over and over again. And yes, that drive to conquer and control is real. It is part of our history that cannot be denied or ignored. And we attend to it, and appropriately so that we can learn from it. Learn how to do better and not repeat the horrors of the past. But we must also remember that our capacity for violence is more than balanced by our capacity for care, for welcome and creativity and wonder. And the history we repeat, well, we can make that a history of kindness as well. We have that choice. We have that power. And when we take to the streets, we are saying we will not let anyone take that power from us. As LeGuin wrote in her essay, if it is a human thing to do, to put something you want because it's useful, edible, or beautiful into a bag, or a basket, or a bit of rolled bark or a leaf, or a net woven of your own hair or what have you, and then take it home with you, and then later on you take it out and you eat it and you share it, or you store it up for winter in a solider container, or put it in a medicine bundle, or the shrine, or the museum, the holy place, the arena that contains what is sacred. And then the next day, you probably do much the same again. If to do that is human, if that's what it takes, then I am a human being after all, she says. Fully, freely, and gladly, for the first time. This day, when we gather here, scarred and scared by what we are witnessing on our streets, how we will tell the story of what it means to be human in this moment matters. And it can be tempting to believe that it is all violence all the time, that the streets of Minneapolis smell like fear and tear gas and blood, and that Minneapolis might also be Chicago or Portland or Carpinteria. But I am convinced that the story that is emerging now, right now, is not just or even mostly about that fear that they are trying to engender. That when we write the story of this time, it will be defined by mutual aid and care as much as anything else. Because we have seen that too. We shouldn't turn away from that either. They may be trying to overwhelm us, shock and awe a city into submission, but what they are finding when they arrive are thousands of people and more every day showing up for their neighbors, collaborating and organizing and extending care in the most tender of ways. And it is inconceivable to some of the more sociopathic people in this administration that these are not paid professional agitators. That people are doing this just out of the goodness of their hearts. That every day, regular people are using those skills of cooperation and connection, those same skills that they use at work or at school or in their family, these mundane human skills. They're using them to build a container of resistance and hope strong enough to hold us all. The carrier bags of this moment are full of groceries being delivered to people who cannot leave their homes. Nets of care are being woven around elementary schools and hospitals, whistles like bird calls warning the flock of danger. No one is a bystander anymore. Like meerkats keeping watch, moms patrol in their cars after morning drop-off. Dads gather with handshakes and hugs and hand out coffee. Aunties and grandparents and tow truck drivers and mail carriers and all those folks in their bathrobes on the street. Because this is their community and they will not be divided. What is rising to the surface over the stories of violence are the stories of people loving their neighbors. Everywhere around this country, there is an uprising of neighborliness. And yes, things are uncertain and awful, and the story is still being written, and I don't know how it will end, but I do know that the tactics of terror and intimidation that they are trying to use against us are backfiring, because they are being met with a fierce and courageous love that is stronger than any weapon they can muster. It is a courageous love that is informed by the past, but it is also busy imagining a world that is better than any our history has yet to produce. People are building new containers of mutual aid and care, and strengthening and repurposing the social containers already established. Did you know that the largest nurses union in the country, National Nurses United, with over 225,000 members, just yesterday called for the ICE to be abolished? Are gathering themselves. We are all gathering ourselves, gathering up instead of striking down, strengthening containers, inviting people into relationship, not perfect, not seamless, not without conflict, but soft and human and flexible containers like this congregation. What a Sunday to welcome new members, folks. To be reminded once more that we weave and reweave this nest with each and every person who comes through our doors. We are now approaching 150 years of building and rebuilding this container, this carrier bag that is the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara. And what is a nation if not a container? Could we tell the story of the future of our nation and have it be about a vessel instead of a spear, a nest, a home, a haven, a refuge? Give me your tired, your poor, your hungry, your masses yearning to breathe free. Can we trust our humanity enough to hold this vision for our country? It can be hard to trust on weeks like this. I've had my moments of despair. I imagine that you have too. But on the other side of despair is a deeper, irrepressible, historical human truth. That love does win, always, over and over again, in ways large and small. It may take time, there may be more loss, But the fact that you and I are here together is a testament of hope. We are here together. And there is nothing that can undo that. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.